This week, Parashat Shlach, we are studying a fantastic parasha, a very sad parasha, but a lot of deep lessons that we all have to learn and apply to our very own lives. Starting off with, what's the whole idea of sending spies? Was that God's intention? Wasn't it? Well, our sages teach us, the commentaries teach us that no, God knew that the land was perfect. He did not need spies to go and tour the land. V'yaturu et eretz Canaan. No, God didn't need that. God knew it was perfect. However, others didn't. The troublemakers, unfortunately, the non-believers, the ones who had a problem with really connecting to Hashem, even though after everything they've seen and they've went through. And they come to Moses and they say, Moses, Moses, how do we know this is the land? How do we know that this is the promised land? Moses says, well, this is the one God told us. No, let's go check it out. He says, okay, let me ask Hashem. He comes and he asks God, and God tells him, listen, the Jewish people can fool you, but they can't fool me. No, Moses says, you know what they told me? They told me that they want to come and make sure that this is the land that you promised them. You promised them they're going to come and they're going to find houses full of gold and treasures and an amazing land. As soon as the inhabitants of the land of Israel are going to hear and they're going to know that the Jewish people, the Hebrews, are coming and taking over, they're going to hide everything, they're going to bury everything. So what they want to do is they want to go and spy and scout out where all of their jewels, what riches they have, in order that when we come in and we take over, it'll be there. So again, Hashem says, Moses, they could fool you, but they can't fool me. But do as you wish. If you want to go, choose most righteous men, one of each tribe, send them in, let them go, tour and spy, and come back and give their report. And that's why the Ma'am Loas teaches us, the Torah says, Shlach lecha anashim. Moses, send for you. Because it's for you and the Jewish people, it's not for me. Okay. Another aspect is the very first word of this week's Torah portion, Vaidaber. Vaidaber is a very strong terminology. Just as in God's names, there is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Hashem's name, and then there's Elokim. One of them, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, is more merciful, more compassionate. Elokim is more din, more judgment. So too in the terminology used to speak. There's Vayomer, which is softer, and there's Vaidaber, which is more judgment and more stern. This week's Torah portion starts out Vaidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, stern and strong. Again, because God saw what was going to happen, He didn't encourage it. However, He leaves free will in the hands of each and every one of us, even Moses and the Jewish people during the time of their traveling to Eretz Yisrael after Mount Sinai. This is what is taking place right now. However, the juxtaposition of this story to the previous episode we just read is quite interesting. However, in chronology, the order is a little different, and I'll explain. The chronology is that Miriam speaks negatively about her brother, Moses, to Aaron. How did he marry such a beautiful woman? And what does he feel like he divorced her? Is he higher and greater than each and every one of us? And at her level, that was wrong. It was considered Lashon Hara. She was punished with leprosy. Now, at that moment, she got the leprosy, and the Jewish people waited a full 7 days for her. During those 7 days is when the whole episode of Korach took place. Korach gets up with the rebellion to go and challenge Moses, challenge his leadership, challenge him giving all of the other honors to everyone except for him. He was jealous. And it was very, very sad. And then they were swallowed by the land. That happened before the Jewish people sent the spies into the land of Israel. So it happened Miriam, speaking about Moses, Korach, and then the spies. However, the chronology in the Torah is not so. It first speaks about Miriam in order, and then it skips Korach, it speaks about the spies, and then puts Korach in next week's Torah portion, next week's Parashat Korach. And our commentaries ask why. They tell us very briefly, very simply, that the spies lacked to learn the everlasting message of how careful we need to be when we speak. Look at Miriam. Miriam spoke negatively about her brother, but she had good intentions. After all, it was her little brother. She loved him. She risked her life for him. Back when she was a child, she followed him when he was put in the river. She approached Batya and gave a preposterous idea of taking this baby and bringing it to a midwife, which happened to be her very own mother. She loved Moses to shreds. However, she had even good intentions when she spoke to Aaron about Moses. For his benefit, she was still punished. And the Jewish people didn't learn from that. Even speaking with good intentions, did not learn from that and not to speak derogatory, negatively about the land of Israel, the very land God promised them. And for that reason, the Torah takes the Parsha of Korach, the episode of Korach, puts it later, and puts these two, one next to each other, teaching us that where the spies faulted was they did not learn from the lesson of Miriam. They did not watch their tongue. They did not look at the land of Israel in a complete positive way, in the way that they should have. Now, the Zera Shimshon jumps forward and pays attention to the way Moses reacts to God's reaction. So the Jewish people come back, the spies come back, and they tell the Jewish people what happened, what they saw. There was 2 that gave a good report. However, there were 10 that gave a negative report. And then the Jewish people wept. They cried. And they were screaming, how could we have been taken out of Egypt? We're going to die over here. We're not going to succeed. Moses, how could you do this? It was very, very hard. God comes to Moses and says, Moses, I got a proposition for you. Let's do the following. Let's wipe out this nation. After all, the Jews, they're very difficult. This nation's very difficult. Let's wipe them out and we're going to make a new nation from you. You are going to be the forefather for this brand new nation. It's not going to be Bnei Israel. It will be Bnei Moshe. And they'll still be considered Jews. And however, you will be the one connected. It will give you a better nation. Moses says, no, we can't wipe them out. This is the nation we took out of Egypt together. This is the nation we're going to bring into the land of Israel. And they're going back and forth, and Moses negotiating yet again for the Jewish people on their behalf, as he did by the sin of the golden calf. He says the following. I'm in chapter 14, verses 13, 14, 15, 16. I'm opening up. Vayomer Moshe el Hashem, and Moses tells God, V'shame'u Mitzrayim. Now the Egyptians are going to hear Ki ha'elita b'kochacha et ha'am hazeh mikirbo. The Egyptians are going to hear what happened. The Egyptians are going to hear that you're not bringing them to the land of Israel. The very Egyptians that you took them out of their land, they're going to hear what happened. V'amiru, you know what they're going to do? They're going to say, El Yoshev ha'aretz hazot. They're going to go tell the inhabitants of the land of Israel, Shame'u ki ata Hashem b'kerev ha'am hazeh asher ayin be'ayin nir'ah. They're going to say, you know, the Jewish people are having great favor from God. They see God. Va'ananecha omed alehem, and then he's going to tell them, and they're going to know that your cloud is on top of them, and it's leading them. And at night they have a pillar of fire guiding them in their travel. V'himmatah et ha'am hazeh ki'ish echad. And then this mighty God wiped them out as one person, in one shot. V'amru hagoyim, and then all of the nations are going to say, Asher shame'u et shim'acha lemor. They're going to hear all of what you did for the Jewish people, God. Mi bilti yecholat Hashem lavi et ha'am hazeh la'aretz asher nishba lahem va'ishchatem bamidbar. He says, you know what's going to happen? They're all going to say, God couldn't do it. God doesn't have the power to do it. He can't really bring them into the land of Israel. This is what Moses is telling God. This is negotiation technique. His negotiation technique is, God, there's no point of you wiping out the Jewish people today, even though they came back with a horrible report and they're all crying and they're all resenting the fact you took them out of the land of Israel. Because you know what's going to happen? The Egyptians are going to hear what took place. They're going to remember that that the Jewish people were taken out of their land. They're going to go tell the inhabitants of the land of Israel, you see, God's not capable. And everybody is going to know that Hashem really could not bring the Jewish people into the land of Israel. Hashem would be a chilul Hashem, a desecration of your name, not to carry on with the original plan, bringing the Jewish people into the land of Israel. This people, not a new people. So the Zera Shimshon now, he asks two questions. He says, number one, why is Moses making a point to say that you took the Jewish people out of the land of Egypt bechochacha, with your strength, with power? What, and if you would have taken them out regularly, the claim wouldn't work? That's his first question. His second question is, it seems like the main reason that the nations are going to claim that God cannot bring the Jewish people into the land of Israel is because of the continuous greatness and miracles that God is performing for the Jewish people, even in the desert. So the Zera Shimshon wants to know, why didn't Moses just say straight, you know what, Hashem, it's a chilul Hashem if you don't bring them in? No, he had to go in a roundabout way. You took them out with great strength and power, and the Egyptians and the nations of the world are going to see everything you've done for them, and then they're going to come to the conclusion that you can't bring them into the land of Israel. The Zera Shimshon says it's making no sense to go in such a roundabout and such a big negotiation. Just be concise, Moses. Be concise and say that, Hashem, it doesn't look good on your part, period. Furthermore, he wants to know, why is it that the Egyptians would think that the Jews are so great and that they deserve to be brought in? But it's Hashem. They're blaming it on Hashem. Hashem won't be able to be the one to take them in. So isn't how the Zera Shimshon answers all these questions? He really puts a perspective on this episode in the Torah. He reminds us that the Jewish people should have been in exile, as it was said to Abraham by the birth of Isaac, that they would be in exile for 400 years. Abraham, your descendants, will be in exile for 400 years. However, God in his ultimate mercy and compassion, he gave us an almost 50% discount. Now, Jews love discounts. You tell a Jew that I'm going to give you a $200 pair of shoes for $100, they're loving it. So God gave us a 48% discount. Instead of 400 years, it turned it to 210 years. And he did that for the mere reason that the Jewish people stooped so low that they would have been stuck there in Egypt in the impurity forever. So Hashem pulled them out early. He pulled them out, as Zera Shimshon says, with force, with power. The Egyptians understood that the Jews should have been there for 400 years, but Hashem took them out early. He took them out early with force, with his power. He pushed the Jewish people out. So what does that look like? That looks like Hashem really is pushing them out in order to bring them into the land of Israel. So you know what Moses says? He says, the Jews, the nations of the world and the Egyptians will say, Hashem, he pushed them out early, but he cannot bring them into the land of Israel. Inhabitants of the land of Israel, don't be worried for the Jews. You have another 190 years to worry for them, because their time to enter the land of Israel is not yet. They have to be in exile for 400 years. It's only been 210. Don't be worried. And that would look bad on you, Moses tells God. So you know what Hashem comes back and rebuttals? He says, who said that the nations and the Egyptians are all going to say, oh, Hashem's not capable of doing it? Maybe the Jews deserve it. Maybe the Jews sinned. Maybe they really warranted the fact not entering the land of Israel. Why would you say, Moses, that it's the Egyptians and the nations that are going to blame God's incapability of bringing them into the land of Israel, opposed to the Jewish people's very own faults? It's a good claim. Moses answers back God, the Zera Shimshon says, that the Egyptians, the nations of the world, seen and are witnessing what you've done for the Jewish people. You've given 10 plagues to Egypt. You split the sea. You gave the Torah. You made them win wars. You gave them the manna, the well of water following them, the clouds of glory. You are continuously giving, providing, protecting them. In the eyes of the nations, the Jewish people are righteous. In the eyes of the world, the Jewish people are looking like they're good, like they're favored by you, God. If you drop them now, they're all going to say, their time is not entered. Their time to enter the land has not come. And it's God who's incapable of bringing them into the land of Israel. Because if the Jews really faulted, the clouds would cease, the manna would cease. There'd be so many other things that would happen. But now, if you drop them, it doesn't look good on you. And this concept of Chilul Hashem, Moses was spinning it back on God and saying, God, you don't make your own Chilul Hashem. But it's something we could all learn from. Number one, there's two parts I want to speak about. Number one is the concept of Chilul Hashem. The second is Moses' greatness. When it comes to Chilul Hashem, it is considered to be one of the, if not the worst thing a person can do. We are, as Jews, supposed to be a light upon the nations, or laguim. We're supposed to always show how living a life of Torah, living a life of mitzvot, is the proper and a good thing to do. When a Jew wears a kippah, when a Jew wears tzitzit, when a Jew keeps Shabbat, and unfortunately do other things which are horrible, there's two things we need to pay attention to. Number one, as the individual doing that, we have to realize that we are causing a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name. We need to make a Kiddush Hashem, sanctification of God's name. But as an onlooker, we are not to say just because someone does A, B, C, and D right, that they are perfect in everything. No, everyone has a temptation, and we need to look at them and say, that's not what Judaism stands for. That's not what God stands for. That person has his own struggles or her own struggles and she's working on her life. So are we. So they chose to do A, B, and C, and I do X, Y, Z. That doesn't make each of us or any of us a better person. We are all working in the right direction. So next time we look at or we see a person who identifies themselves as orthodox, observant, religious, don't say just because they identify as that they're perfect. Rather, they're working their way up there. And therefore, just because they do something incorrect, it doesn't mean that that is permitted by God. It doesn't mean that they have a warrant to do what they do. Don't judge them negatively. Don't judge them to say, you see, it's all worthless. You see, the whole Torah is no good. No! Rather, they have a struggle and they're working on it. And so are we, each of us in our own way. The only way to make up for Chilul Hashem, for desecration of God's name, as the Rambam tells us, is by doing a Kiddush Hashem, sanctification of God's name. Going out and making an effort to make it known to others, to other Jews and to other nations, that as Jews we are good people, we are ethical, moral people, we seek goodness, we seek to help. We believe in God, we follow in God's ways the most possible. When we do something good and we notify others that we're doing it because we are Jews and we're doing it because we believe in God and we follow God's path and the Torah's path, that is a sanctification of God's name. Moses was coming up with a very, very, very strong claim against God for the Jewish people, just for God to preserve the Jewish people. And it worked. Moses was the most dedicated leader the Jewish people has ever had. As Jews, we have to be dedicated to our families, to our communities, to ourselves, and to God. Moses was fantastic in that. To the point where, unfortunately, God accepted his plea. He accepted his negotiation. But the truth is that generation did not enter the land of Israel. They were spared from dying, they perished, and the next generation was brought in by Joshua into the land of Israel. But Moses, whether he liked it or not, and I think he liked it less than liking it, he was like that captain who sinks with the ship if not everyone is able to get out. He perished, he passed, he did not make it into the land of Israel because the people he took out of Egypt did not make it either. That is a true leader. Let us all be leaders. Let us all be leaders to inspire others to do a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name, to make them, veer them away from Chilul Hashem. Unfortunately, especially in the world that we live in now, with social media and news, there are too many people, whether they are unfortunately Jews or non-Jews, trying to make us look bad, trying to make the Jews not look so proper and so much as God intended. Let us be the ones to make that difference. Let us be the ones to show the world, to show other Jews, to show ourselves that we are committed and that we follow in the ways of God, in the path of His Torah, and through His mitzvot. So may the merit of the Zera Shimshon be upon all of us, approaching this very holy Shabbat of Shlach Lecha Anashim, and learning from all of these lessons to look at the land of Israel in a positive way, and look at all of the politics and the war and the hardship that takes place over there as a method to draw closer to God rather than away, and to inspire others to draw closer to God. Looking at the land of Israel with all of its imperfection as it is today in 2019, and still only speak good about it and only have good feelings towards the land of Israel. Bezrat Hashem, Shabbat Shalom Barach, Amen v'Amen.